All right, and welcome again, everybody, for another edition of Spincast. Today we have from Murray State a couple of racers. We've got Jacob Mitchell, who's a student currently at Murray State, as well as Sean MITCHUSON. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Sean?
That is correct.
Look at that.
Woo.
That's good. I think my job here is done. I'm good.
There we go.
I'll let you guys really kind of talk about who you are, what your role is at the university, and how you got to come into this esports space. If you can kind of fill in the gaps for us a little bit from A to Z, and then we'll kind of ask some questions from there. But if you could start us off with that, Sean, that would be great.
Sure. So, I've worked at Murray State for about 10 years now, involved with information technology. So I've always been kind of the computer nerd type. I've been a gamer since I was like 3 or 4. My mom taught me how to play Space Invaders. And that has just kind of continued throughout my life. That led me to becoming the staff support advisor for the esports club on our campus. And so I do that as like a liaison, a communications, support person. And that has led me into, well, help us plan what it could be for the university. Upper administration said, you do it. You seem to enjoy it. You seem to have passion for it. So, we've designed business plans. We help other schools in our area kind of get involved with esports and things. And that all sort of funnels into me. And I just sort of delegate to the students when I can and let them get a lot of experience through esports that I think helps educate them for the future.
Awesome. Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt. Nothing like learning on the job, if you will. So, Jacob, tell us about you and your story.
Yeah, sure. I am a student at Murray State University, currently a sophomore. I'm in the engineering, graphics, and design program. I do a lot of CAD work in that field, a lot of meticulous like machining, stuff like that. But with respect to esports, I am the vice president of Racer Esports currently at Murray State. My entry into that was kind of weird. I saw a booth that was outside the Curra Center that Sean and the previous kind of officers had created there. And at that point, I was a little too nervous to go up to a booth like that before. I'm sure we've all been there, stuff like that. But then I just kind of found out about the stuff that the club had done. And I just kind of, weaseled my way in there and then ended up on the team. And then here I am, vice president. So it's been a really great experience. Wouldn't really trade it for anything. It's been a great thing to do. So.
Awesome. You got a couple more years to go, so that's fantastic. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say you're an Overwatch player.
Yes, there you go. Not too hard, right?
There's a little bit of a giveaway there on the screen. So how many platforms, how many different games do you guys play in general?
Gotcha. So currently the club supports, I think, 3 to 4, might be 5, depending on who you talk to. But currently it's mostly Overwatch, League of Legends, Rainbow Six, and we've got some Hearthstone in there too. So those are mainly the core stuff. But yeah, it's just a lot of variety. Basically, what anything anyone wants to play, we'll basically support it if we have the lab time to help them out with it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Awesome. So you talk about a number of those games that you currently play. So let's go backwards a little bit, Sean, in respect to when this all began and what prompted that. What actually produced the fact that now there's an esports club at Murray State? What was that awakening or aha moment one? And how is it now versus when it first started?
Sure. So when it first started, it was actually 2007 or 8. I was just back from Japan, working at the university, and some students were just sort of playing games in a computer lab in one of our buildings on campus. Mm-hmm. They would pack their equipment over from the dorms because the internet connection over in the university side was better than residential college side. And they wanted to all play together in the same room. And that was about 5 to 10 people. And it was just League of Legends. And, I was like, this is really cool. I've always wanted to be involved with competitive esports, but never really had a chance to. So I just sort of started helping them out, making sure that they always got the lab time they needed. And then as the years went on, 09, 10, 11, 12, it started to wane in popularity because a lot of students were like, I don't want to pack my $2,000 computer over to campus. I'm not into that. And so we tried broadening to add a bunch more games at once, which kind of worked for a little while. Hearthstone was a big bonus for us because you could start playing it on a computer or a tablet or a phone. That really got a lot of people's attention. And then it started to wane again because a lot of the students that were motivated to help had graduated at that point, and the rest just wanted to play video games. And then about 2 years ago, I guess it is now, one of the current other student officers, Aaron, who's graduating this May, he showed up and he said, "Hey, I really want to pick this back up. I think this could be something again. What can we do? How much do you want to help?" I'm like, "I'll help as much as I can, but it's really on you guys." And they just started a campaign like none other. Tables out front, just sitting out all day saying, "Hey, you guys want to play esports? We're not just League of Legends anymore." And people are like, "What, really?" So, and it just exploded. We went from about 15 to 20 students to we're over 200 active-ish members at this time. Coronavirus and not being on campus has really kind of hindered that, but we stay pretty well in the 100 to 150 range most days. There's people doing stuff all the time, so it's really cool.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's so cool that you can include students that without it may not have been part of an association or a club or something
Right.
the university framework. So you mentioned something interesting there. You said the coronavirus has kind of dwindled that a little bit. Most parents and students probably watching at home are thinking, well, this is online, so what difference does it make? But obviously it's on campus in terms of some of the events I'm sure that you put on there. Jacob, can you speak a little bit to that in respect to the social aspect of esports?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, the main thing I really love about esports is that social interaction part. Something you really wouldn't suspect, because I mean, the stereotype of gamers, right, is to be kind of, I'm going to sit on my computer and just have my headset on and not talk to anyone. But once you're on a team, especially, that social part of you is almost like you have to use that, otherwise your team is not going to like perform that well. So like, originally, like all when you start a group, it's kind of, quiet, like no one likes to talk. But then as soon as you start getting those, inside jokes and just having fun, but also being competitive about it, it's a great experience. So that's something we really strive to do at Racer Esports. But due to COVID, obviously our campus has been closed like many other campuses across the US. And many of our students actually relied on the Racer Esports lab there with all the gaming equipment to actually play on those teams. So we've seen a big hit to our B squads or our blue squads for those, because most of those relied on that equipment. To my knowledge, most of our A squads are still good. They have machines to do that. But a lot of the tournaments they were in at the beginning of the semester have actually ended like halfway through when all of this kind of arose and exploded. So we've kind of had to adapt to that, but I think most teams have done an okay job at doing that.
Awesome. So I would assume you play against different colleges and universities as well. Would that be accurate?
Definitely.
I have to ask, who's your biggest rival?
For the Overwatch, I can really only speak for that. We don't really have a rival per se, because we play so many teams so often that that hasn't really occurred yet. I would say if it did, it would have to be someone regional. FSU, we've played against Florida State University probably a handful of times, and I think the League of Legends team as well played against them, and I think we've beaten them a couple times. So that's always good for a rivalry when you beat them a couple times. That's the only one I can think of currently right now.
Gotcha. Pretty good one.
Yeah.
So we talk about how much that has grown, I guess, just really, I mean, obviously you started way back when, and as you mentioned, Sean, it kind of started to move along a little bit, but then really started to pick up steam, almost like esports on steroids, how quickly you've grown. In a perfect world, if you could envision Murray State, the campus, as well as the program, 5 years from now, what would be ideal? What would you like to see there in that respect, Sean?
So, golly, the ideal would be a lot more areas on campus for the social part of it. We do have a room right now with dedicated computers, but once 10 people are in there, the place becomes sweltering hot. It's bad. if we had a much larger space where we could, you know, involve more casual folks as well as the really competitive folks,
Mhm.
that would be something I think Murray State would definitely benefit from, both from a recruitment and retention perspective, and saying we have these type of social things to do other than study, because that's a big part of how a lot of colleges recruit students is this is what we can offer you as well as an education, because we know you're not just interested in studying 24/7.
Mhm.
So, you know, we do stuff like movies in the pool at the wellness center. We do we have a movie theater in one of our main social buildings, but we don't really have a good place for people that like to play video games, for people that like to play board games, for people that like to play card games. There's not a good space for that on campus, but there is a large population of students on campus that do those things. There's a large population of faculty and staff on campus that do those things. Our faculty and staff are involved in, and this is a weird stat related to esports, 64 unique Dungeons and Dragons groups on
Mhm.
our campus. That's not including student groups. That is just faculty and staff Dungeons and Dragons groups.
Okay.
Um, so there's definitely this community that we have on campus that we're missing out on, and esports would be able to fund and mature and grow that community, which would just grow our student community, our student involvement. And in 5 years' time, that's, you know, these teams teaching other students. That's summer camps for high school kids and middle school kids and elementary school kids that maybe want to play a little bit better, practice in the off season. They could come up, we could teach them a little bit more about that, you know, and in 5 years' time, we're as popular as our basketball team. You know, that's what I really want to
Right.
do.
Yeah,
Certainly
that'd be awesome.
yeah, certainly the popularity surrounding esports is certainly growing quite a bit and has been with COVID-19. It's only helped enhance that a little bit. I think more and more eyes anyway are able to see it, and try to now start to figure out, well, what is this space, and can it help me? Can it hurt me, et cetera? Let's talk about that just for a moment. I'm going to switch over for you, Jacob. As you grew up and now that you play, what are some of the stereotypes that you have heard on the negative side of things that really
Mhm.
just aren't true, but
Yeah.
certainly are out
I mean, I'm pretty much like the poster child for like stuff where I was like, esports? What? Like, that sounds dumb. You know what I mean? Um, but I was mostly when I was younger, I was just kind of, you know, like my PS2, nothing much, like just a couple casual games. Um, didn't really think like, oh, that could be something. And then I watched the news one night and I saw something about esports when I was probably a teenager, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But I mean, that won't ever get big. And then I was playing on my Xbox one day, and my buddy showed me Overwatch. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. So I really loved that game. And then all of a sudden, Blizzard came out with the Overwatch League. I was like, whoa, that's amazing. And then, so like people get to be paid to play Overwatch. That's awesome. And then from that moment forth, it's just been like, so much has been coming at me from all directions, like League of Legends stuff, like Valorant coming up, CS:GO being so old for so long. Um, it's just been really awesome. But yeah, so like the stereotype just kind of been like, really, esports? Like that's what you're going to put your time to rather than studying, like Sean said. Like a lot of people that I've talked to, like, why don't you just study and make sure you do that? Um, and you know, just stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah, understood. Understood. Last question, to kind of circle off the same topic, but back to you, Sean. Obviously, as an educator and being in the system, you see kind of a number of students come up through the esports club and so forth, and you see some of the strengths that it really kind of amplifies within those students that you wouldn't typically think of. And Jacob, you actually alluded to some of them earlier in terms of you have to be able to communicate. It's almost like any other sport, team building
Yep.
skills, communication skills.
Hmm.
They really do have to be top notch, but there's other things beyond that most people wouldn't think of. So Sean, if you can talk a little bit about that, and then from an education perspective, you know, some of the career paths that certainly the doors get opened up, if you will, for those esports type players.
Right, sure. I mean, again, communication skills is number one. You learn to be a much better communicator and a much quicker communicator. When you're on a team like Jacob's, your quick reaction thinking skills are built, your critical thinking skills are built up. You think more about others instead of just yourself. And that's really a good skill to have. As silly as that sounds, a lot of people don't think, well, I think about others. When you're on a team and you're working to win something, you really start to think about other people. Some of the ones that a lot of people don't think about that I try to sprinkle in is professional writing skills, um, proper communication skills, like learning how to talk with other schools, like, hey, we're not going to be able to make this match. A lot of times we've had our team get somewhat upset that a school will no-show us. Like, we're having a tournament on a weekend, the school just won't tell us they're not showing up. And I've said, you guys, that makes you guys really mad. So if you have to do that, make sure to reach out to them as soon as possible. Understand their feelings, because you know how your feelings have gotten hurt by this. And I think our students have grown amazingly in that regard. They're very good at communication now. It was one of the hardest parts to get going when I started helping the students in the past couple of years. Is you got to communicate more. You got to talk more. You got to tell me what you need. They thought it would just sort of work. But now they're learning, oh, okay, I've got to ask for this. I've got to know how to say these things, And then as for careers, any major can get put in esports. If you work a business major, well, esports teams need, business managers and people that run the books and control all the finances. If you're a data analyst, well, there's tons of data involved in esports. So you're going to need to crunch those numbers and put up all those different stats that people like to read. Broadcasting and journalism, you need color commentators, you need shoutcasters, you need people writing articles about these players, as they live their lives and all this interesting stuff happens. People want to read about that, just like any other famous sports person. If Kobe Bryant does something, people wanted to know, but maybe people want to know what Jacob does.
Yeah.
So
maybe, who knows?
Right about that. Who knows? And it's really any major. Historians, IT professionals, they need a giant network back end. They need server infrastructure. They need artists, musicians. Any major that you want to take in college could lead you into the esports path. And that's been something we've really promoted. We have a brand new cybersecurity program on our campus. And that has become a major focal point in gaming right now is security. Valorant being one of the big examples. There's quite a big argument going on right now about, well, how safe is it to let Riot completely have full kernel viewing access of my system? Is that okay? Do I trust that? Is that, how much are they protecting? Are they just collecting my data and selling it to Tencent or China or, whoever, and that is a giant discussion that's happening right now. And if you're a cybersecurity major, you're probably looking at the system they're using to monitor your machine while you play Valorant to see what it is doing. So it's every avenue. There's not I can't think of a single major that we offer that could not be applied to esports in some form or fashion.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I've experienced that too. And just in a number of these podcasts that we've done, and it really just starts, as a parent, it really starts to open my eyes as to, wow, there really are a lot of different prospects out there in respect to, hey, if my son or daughter is really interested in this field and is really good at this, well, those two certainly can kind of merge together in some way, shape, or form. So that's fantastic. Well, guys, we are definitely up on time, but I can tell you, Sean, obviously, I think Murray State's headed in a good direction with you at the helm. Jacob, your passion for the sport certainly shows, and I sincerely appreciate it. Keep following it. Keep doing well. Really good talking to you both. I sincerely appreciate your time. Hopefully the audience gets even a little bit more information. So thanks again for your time, and I hope you guys stay safe. And hopefully we'll be able to catch back up down the road a little bit just to check in and see how you guys are doing.
Sure. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You got it.